the modified car scene. In this arena, it takes a lot to stand out, and it takes even more to be crowned king. But one guy from Japan did just that, thanks in part to a stunt that would end up with his arrest and a 10-year driving ban to boot. But who was he, and how did he end up in handcuffs? Well, let's find out, because my name's Alex, and you're watching QuattroCam. To truly understand Kazuhiko Nagata, we need to head back to Japan, specifically Hokkaido, Japan. Born the son of a farmer in 1964, Kazuhiko didn't care much for his way of life. Kazuhiko was short and thin, an introvert, a far cry from the perfect farmhand. But one thing did catch his eye from a young age, his father's love of speed. And from a young age, Kazuhiko needed little persuasion to jump behind the wheel. Kazuhiko had found something he truly enjoyed around the farmhouse, so it was as no surprise when at 15 he bought his first car. Well, if you could call it that. The Mitsubishi Galant GTO needed some serious TLC, more than the young Kazuhiko could handle on his own. He needed help, and luckily for our story, he wasn't far away. Just across the road, his neighbour, a manager of a local Toyota plant, took Kazuhiko under his wing. They worked night and day to get the Galant back to its former glory. An impressive achievement for the young Kazuhiko. Eager to show off his craftsmanship, Kazuhiko would drive his GTO to school and back. But trouble was on the horizon. Even having turned 16, Kazuhiko was still too young to legally drive. And when his teachers discovered this, they served the harshest punishment: expulsion. This wouldn't be the last time Kazuhiko would be expelled. Kazuhiko was now cast out into the world with no formal education to fall back on. Feeling partly responsible, Kazuhiko's neighbour called in a few favours and got him a job at the Toyota plant. He would become their youngest ever employee, but he would have to prove himself if he wanted to stay. Training his skills day after day, Kazuhiko became a skilled worker. With his knowledge of Toyota, he swapped his Galant for a Celica and began putting his new skills to the test. Every spare moment he had would be spent testing and modifying his new car, and after 4 years at Toyota, his passion for modification took over his life. Every spare moment became every moment, and Kazuhiko was expelled once again, fired for tuning his own car on company time. But this wasn't a setback for Kazuhiko, it was a moment that set him free. All that time spent tuning and testing built a love for racing. Kazuhiko knew what the next step was. He just needed to make it happen. To do this, he just needed to move 800 miles to a little place called Tokyo. The big city was a far cry from his home life. Tokyo was a sprawling city full of life, but this comes at a cost. He couldn't live like he did in Hokkaido. Kazuhiko needed money if he was to begin his dream in the big city. But where better to start than at Tuner's Trust, the name behind Creddy. It was here where his brand would become established. Kazuhiko was assigned muffler and turbo duties at Trust, a great place to improve his craft. But Kazuhiko wanted more. He wanted to tune for top speed. So, in secret, Kazuhiko would bring his own projects into the shop, staying after hours to use the facilities to improve his own work. Needless to say, this didn't remain a secret for long. When his bosses found out, it looked like the same ending for Kazuhiko, but this time it wasn't. Valued as a skilled craftsman, his bosses kept his after-hours work a secret, not wanting to lose his expertise. And so, from this secret, Kazuhiko would form his tuning house. Its name, Top Secret. Kazuhiko couldn't have picked a better time to start. This was 90s Japan, the mecca of tuner cars, from the 300ZX to the Mark IV Supra, the FD RX-7, and Godzilla itself. Kazuhiko was stepping out into the most abundant marketplace in history. Potential was unlimited, but Kazuhiko wasn't the only tuner in town. Everyone far and wide saw what was possible with these cars. Top speed was the new thing. 0 to 300 km/h runs became the new currency. Yatabe's oval proving ground was the arena, but soon this would spill out onto the streets of Tokyo, with the city's expanding infrastructure playing host to these high-speed games. Most notably, Tokyo's Aqualine Tunnel, stretching some 9.5 kilometers under Tokyo Bay. This late-night drag strip would become Kazuhiko's home. Now this seems like the perfect time to address where Smokey gets his nickname. It's not because of his smoking habit, but before I get to that, if you've enjoyed this video so far, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. It's free and it really helps us out. So as promised, Smokey gets his nickname not from his smoking habit. Well, not the one you might be thinking of. You see, Kazuhiko loved bear downs, partly because they were fun, but also because they got the tyres warm before he attempted his high-speed runs. This is why he was known as Smokey, a vital procedure before going 200 200 miles an hour on a public road. Kazuhiko started out with an R32 Skyline before progressing to the R33, a car which hit 0 to 300 kilometers an hour in 17 seconds at Yatabe and 204 miles an hour in the top. But what made his cars so special? Well, for one, he had no loyalty. You see, Kazuhiko would put on the parts that he needed, regardless of the manufacturer. His builds weren't tied to brands, so he had no need to maintain a relationship. If it worked for the setup, it went on the car, named brand or not. It was about going fast, and this speed was getting noticed. One name in attendance was of particular interest: Max Power. For those that might not be familiar, Max Power was the go-to place for car news and reviews before YouTube and even before shows like Top Gear hit the mainstream. If it was fast and modified, getting on the cover of Max Power was the ultimate symbol of success. Magazines just like this even enabled the first Fast and the Furious film to become a reality, with Craig Lieberman's cars being spotted by the film's driving coordinator, so their place in history cannot be understated. It wasn't just exposure either. Max Power was so impressed by what they saw, they offered to send Smokey in his car to the Max Power live show. It was here where the idea was hatched. It would eventually land him in handcuffs. The car they wanted to see was not the R32, nor was it the R33, but the top secret Supra. And I know what you're thinking, but this Supra is very different. The standard 2JZ engine was great for lighting tyres, thanks to its low-end torque, but Smokey wanted top speed, so another engine was needed, one he had experience working with in great depth. So obviously, he ripped out the 2J and dropped in an RB26 instead. So I know what you're thinking, why not just use a GTR? Well, there were many factors, but the slipperiness of the Supra's body was built for top speed runs, much more than the boxier GTR. And with all that agreed, Smokey set off to England, fully understanding that to get the most attention, he might have to break a few laws. Smokey started his tour around the UK's road network with a series of burnouts, and then early on the morning of November 4th, the run began. With the roads at their quietest, Smokey stopped in the middle of the A1 and began his pre-run procedure, lighting up his tyres before setting off into the distance. The road was wet, but Smokey kept it planted, climbing up to 197 miles per hour, 3 shy of what he wanted to achieve. If this was correct, it would be the highest speed recorded on a UK road, even today. But Smokey was not as alone as he had thought. When he had begun to wind down his run and reduce his speed, lights appeared in the distance. A UK motorway cop was on his tail, known today as the Interceptors. Motorway cops use advanced driving techniques and high-performance cars to detain road users. If Smokey wanted to, he could have left them in the dust. No police car on the British Isles could have caught him, but ultimately, getting arrested for doing 197 miles per hour and setting a countrywide record would be pretty good for his image, and that of top secret back in Japan. You might be wondering how this video made it out into the world. Well, the camera tech hid the tape in his pants when the cops turned up. UK cops don't normally strip search people unless they suspect them of drug use, so this quick thinking helped save the footage and made Smokey a global star. Once out of custody, Smokey admitted to doing 120 miles an hour, very clever, and was banned from the UK for 10 years. He had a 1-month international license suspension and a £155 fine and £35 court costs. He went back to his hotel, packed his things, and snuck out through the back door to avoid the press that were hot on his heels. The run worked. Smokey and Top Secret gained worldwide attention. The RB-powered Supra from the run was quickly snapped up by Dubai Prince, and Smokey set his sights on a new prize, 400 kilometers an hour or 245 miles per hour. For this, he would again return to the Supra platform, but the 2J or RB wouldn't cut the mustard for this goal. The power plant this time would come from a very unlikely source, the Toyota Century, Toyota's luxury executive barge. The Century would surely not suit the Supra or 250 miles an hour. Well, as it turned out, the engine from the Century was a 5-litre V12, and once Smokey had strapped 2 HKS GT 2540 turbos to it with a custom bespoke cooling tank in the boot paired with a custom slippery body kit, the result would speak for itself. 930 brake horsepower and one of the most iconic tuner cars of all time. Smokey shipped the car to the Nardo Ring in Italy to see how fast it could go. Well, he would leave disappointed, only managing 358 kilometers an hour or 225 miles an hour. So he took it back to Japan and the Aqualine Tunnel of Tokyo. Here, he would do 370 kilometers an hour or 229 miles per hour. He was close, but not quite there. Smokey and Top Speed are still at it today. Smokey hopes to hit his target with the new R35 GTR, which just hit 234 miles an hour. Will it make it to 400 kilometers an hour or 245 miles per hour? Only the future can tell us. But what we can say in the present is that this expelled racer, fired for his single-mindedness, has gone on to build one of the most recognizable tuning brands in the entire world, proving that you can get what you want if you give it your all. But if you don't feel up to that right this very second, why not click on one of these other videos instead? You won't regret it. And if you have made it this far and you haven't hit the like button or subscribed, why not do it before you check out one of the other videos?